7 o'clock tonight.
Okay, thank you and welcome to the Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. My name is JB Kalin. I am a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it is my pleasure to introduce our panel, Do Athletes Need the Media? Our panelists today include Jeannie Buss, owner of the LA Lakers, Larry Fitzgerald, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals, Adam Hansman, founder, The Athletic, and Katie Nolan, host at ESPN.
Ooh.
Wow.
I'm
Awesome.
familiar.
And our panel today will be moderated by Jack McCollum, special contributor, Sports Illustrated. The panel will last for about 45 minutes, after which, if there's time, we'll take Q&A. If you'd like to submit a question, please do so via Twitter using the hashtag #AthletesAndMedia. Now with that, I'll hand it over to Jack.
Thank you very much. First thing I'd like to note is that a special thank you to Jeannie Buss, who's in a pinch-hitting role this morning. Michelle Roberts, who you might see was supposed to make it, proving the adage that you do not book a morning flight to Boston anytime before June if you have to make it in the morning. But Jeannie is a wonderful addition. Also, there's sort of a limited scope to the question that was raised about the panel. Do athletes still need the media? We didn't want anyone to just go, no, and then we would be done. So the conversation, we have a number of people from really different aspects of the sports world. So we're hopefully going to branch off into several areas. The panel idea was my idea, and why I would suggest something in which we may prove my own obsolescence is a mystery. But nevertheless, hopefully the answer is yes, we still kind of need the media, but I don't want to point anyone in that direction. So just by way of introduction to the topic, I entered the sports world a while back. I can hear the audience saying, no shit. But back when the media was pretty much the conduit for the athlete's story. If you covered high school sports, the high school athlete wanted to impress his parents, or he wanted to impress his girlfriend. But the story was told through the sports writer. It was the same thing in college athletics. If a college athlete wanted to get himself to the pros, he or she told his story through the reporter. And even pro athletes, if they wanted to make an all-star team or get to the Hall of Fame, that they pretty much used the sports writer in that fashion. But things have changed, and Kevin Durant, for example, has become, and Rich Kleiman, Kevin Durant's manager, was originally going to be here. Kevin has become a brand sort of almost by his own creation. I mean, obviously what he's done on the court has a lot to do with it, but the media, to a large extent, really didn't have a lot to do with it, and it hasn't always been that way. Michael Jordan was probably the first brand, and that was not, if David Falk's in the audience, he's going to, which I'm sure he's not, thank God, but he would disagree with the fact that Michael didn't create his brand as much as the boardrooms of Nike and the adoring sports writers, of which I was probably one. So with the coming of social media, the Players Tribune, and the increasing sophistication of athletes to kind of carve their own image, you know, that has changed. And so we kind of come to that question. So let me start off with a question for Adam. What do you think about the state of the sports media in general? Adam has a co-founder named Alex Mather, and I think Adam is in charge of saying all the reasonable things, and Alex is in charge of saying all the controversial things. And one of the things Alex said was, we were frustrated as sports fans seeing the quality of sports journalism deteriorate in the digital era. Do you believe that's the case, and is that a large reason that The Athletic exists?
Sure. Yeah, I think
and same sentiment from my perspective. I think it's sort of a little bit of best of times, worst of times. I mean, there's so many innovative things happening in media with the different platforms and sort of streaming, OTT, all of those kinds of things have been really innovative and I think good for sports fans. I would say fundamentally, Alex, my co-founder, and I, our frustration came from a place of being local sports fans. And traditionally, local sports fans were served by the sports page of a local newspaper. And, in the last 30 years, that has not been a good sort of run for newspapers. And so our frustration was really that as local fans. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio originally, grew up reading Cincinnati Enquirer every morning for the first, 18 years of my life. And that connection had sort of diminished over time. And so our thesis was that we could start to rebuild around local sports, where ESPN is the worldwide leader. They're the world's largest sports media company by an order of magnitude, but they don't give me something that I need as a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, for example. And so that was really our thesis, was to move away from advertising, move into a subscription model that would reward quality and allow us to treat journalists really well. And we're 3 years old. We've built, I think, the second largest newsroom in sports. At this point, we've launched in 47 markets, and I think the most shocking part is that subscribers, consumers, fans have kind of taken to it, and they've started to pay for quality journalism effectively. And so we've been very pleased to see that. But I think athletes and others have a lot more options now. They're not dependent on the journalists in the locker room to get a message out. They can kind of control their own message, and we respect that. But I still think fans have demonstrated in our case that there's a demand for independent, objective, journalistic coverage, storytelling, and things like that.
Jeannie, what do you think of the state of the? You've been around, and I say you've been around a long time only because you were so young. You were so young when you started, hanging around with your dad in locker rooms. What do you think in general? The state of the sports media right now?
I think there's always like a love-hate relationship with the media when you're on this side of the business. That the media, for example, there was a lot of hype and things written about a potential trade leading into the trade deadline. And all of it false, but it got a lot of coverage. And there's damage that's done to team chemistry when players have to read about all this. That is, to me, it's irresponsible and frustrating because it puts feelings that your players have, and you can't avoid it. It's part of the landscape that we deal with. But on my side, it seems like it's gotten more. There's more things written and put out there that have no backup, nobody's name associated with the story or the quotes, and an unnamed source, and it's frustrating, and I would rather see that not happen. I'd rather see more responsibility with the media, and maybe just taking it back a little bit to think about who it's affecting when they do write lies and conjecture and made up stuff just to get clicks and to get followers. It's really not right.
Yeah. Larry, and I asked Larry, everybody should know, maybe you do know this, is the only Hall of Fame bound athlete, I think, whose father is also a sports writer. What do you think of the state of the sports media in general, allowing for the fact that your father is in fact in it?
I'm a little biased because I grew up in a household with a journalist, and I always have a great appreciation for the terrific art of writing, and to be able to convey what you're able to see, some of the greatest feats some of the athletes are able to accomplish. And even my earliest childhood memories, I see the great relationships that journalists and athletes had. I mean, everybody knows about Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali's affinity for each other, and I think the combination of those two together, I mean, really rose both of their profiles. So I think when done in the right way, it can magnify both a journalist and an athlete to an elite platform. And I think that always going to be a need for great journalism covering wonderful athletic feats. And it's changing, but I don't think we can ever go without it.
Yeah. Katie?
I think it's doing great.
Here we are. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
As a member of the sports media, like Larry said, it is different now than it was before. But that has, obviously for me, that has afforded the ability for me to get into the sports media. And for shows that don't have access, which all sports media was born of, access to the athletes and to the teams and to the locker rooms. I don't have that as a studio show, and I can still have access to information because I get it from the athletes through their social channels. So I think that, yes, things are changing, and we have to change with it, which we've seen with networks and other companies adapting to all the different platforms, and it's been very fun watching old men learn what Snapchat is. But it's...
Are you talking to me?
No, I don't know if you're on Snapchat. I don't follow you.
No.
Okay.
Not Snapchat.
We'll get you on by the end of the day. But it's, I mean, obviously we all have to adapt and change along with it, but I think it's incredibly valuable to hear about, because not all athletes are on social media. Not all athletes want to talk about themselves. And so, you know, the media doesn't just pick the guys that only post about themselves. There are people who need to have their stories told, and the media allows for that.
Yeah. You, with the possible exception of Katie, you grew up, Jeannie, Larry, maybe not Adam, who I know he's not 14, even though he looks it, but that's a compliment, by the way. But you grew up, Jeannie, you know, with traditional media. I mean, really in the middle of it, you know, back when there wasn't anything else. So you kind of touched on this, but I mean, the changes that have come, they all good, they all bad, or are they halfway in between, sort of?
I think it's, you know, I think it's become irresponsible and reckless. And, you know, I think that social media has made that probably allowed it, because now it doesn't really matter who puts it out. It either, you know, somebody could put something on social media and then it trickles up, and then people have to comment on it, even though it's, you know, a false story, but now it becomes part of the conversation, and then you can't make it go away. You can't unhear it. And, you know, I think back, you know, in the days when I started in this business, it seemed to be more, there was more responsibility about the things that were written, and that you couldn't, you know, get away and have a good reputation with planting a story that, without naming a source, or, you know, giving some kind of credibility, so that you knew that it wasn't somebody just trying to damage your brand, damage your team, damage your player. You know, it's frustrating to me, which is why I'm on social media, because it allows me to have a voice to come straight from me, and not have to go through somebody that might twist something that I have to say. So I think, you know, we're just in a different landscape. There's a lot of power through the media, and it can be very helpful, but it can also be very damaging.
You come at it, you almost have a triple barrel aimed at you. You know, you're a team owner, you're a woman, and you went through a period of time when you had a personal relationship with a very famous person.
Yes.
So you've pretty much had to withstand the barrage of social media criticism, I would guess. And since we're on the subject, Katie, I guess that would be the same thing, kind of, for
a very famous man there.
What's that?
I said I did date a very famous. I was just joking.
Okay. I was going to say who was it, because I wasn't aware of it, but. But I mean, you sort of, do you look at your
Mentions?
your mentions?
No.
No.
I do. I shouldn't. It's a constant conversation. I will say, as a woman, I shouldn't be the only one who has to answer this question, but I will answer it. You've kind of adjusted. I've adjusted over the years to learn what to care about and what not to. It's insane what I can look at and be like, yeah, that's nothing. This is the one that really hurts. But it's a fine line between listening to what people feedback from people, real people, which sometimes, the media in the past maybe ignored completely what real people have to say about the product that you're putting out there. And then also knowing that a lot of these opinions are not ones that you need to listen to. But it is why I think the media, sports media specifically, is still important, because not all athletes want to get involved in that. I wouldn't encourage an athlete. I was telling Larry before, I was like, don't ever look at your mentions, because it's not going to help you in any way. So if an athlete doesn't want to be exposed to that, the media can still help them tell their story and interact with fans or show fans a different side of themselves without having to get into the mud that's on social media.
Yeah. Larry, you're on Twitter, active on Twitter. Do you, I didn't expect to turn this conversation so quickly to social media, but because it's inevitable we're going to go there. But do you look at stuff that you write, and do you look at the notes that you get from it? Do you look at people replying to you?
No, I don't. I don't even, be honest with you, I don't even have it on my phone.
You what?
I don't even have the applications on my phone. I don't. I'm just not.
We just made news here, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm just not really.
You don't have a flip phone, do you still?
No. I just choose not to deal with it. I mean, because when I did, it became a bit of a distraction from time to time. It's people commenting on this. I didn't like the way you wore this, or the way you performed, or your fantasy points, or it's just mostly just all negativity. And I just didn't want to expose myself to it any longer. I'm still active, but I just am not really all that interested in the comments that people have to make, to be honest with you. I'm not a consumer. I'm not selling clothes. So the opinion of people doesn't really hold as much weight, if that makes sense to you. I think it's important now with our young people, especially the young athletes, they have to have the utmost confidence in their ability to go out there and perform at the highest level, regardless of what people think of you, what team they think you should be on, what your fantasy production is. Like, you need to be able to have a sense of worth that's not just based on what other people that you don't even know think about you, and I think that's important.
We were talking backstage. You mentioned that your father is on Twitter and is somewhat of a loose cannon. He's kind of the anti-Larry guy on Twitter.
Yeah, he's. We've had some bouts of late that I haven't liked. My dad is a journalist. He's been a journalist for the last 42 years, and his experience as a journalist has given me an insight that I don't think any other guy that I know of has had the opportunity to have. I mean, from my earliest childhood days, I remember, being in the Metrodome and going out in the center field and catching fly balls with Kirby Puckett, or Kevin Garnett after practice, working on his free throws. 30 minutes after practice, I'm rebounding for him. Or before games at the Vikings, out there throwing passes to Chris Carter and Randy Moss, and doing things that really, as a child, you just look up to your idols. But at that, I was taking it all in. I was looking at it and saying, look, this is something I really want to do. This is the work ethic of some of the greatest Hall of Famers that ever played. I get a chance to be up close and personal. I get a chance to see them. Those opportunities were presented only because my father was a journalist. He had a relationship with those athletes. They allowed me into that inner circle for me to be able to watch and understand and grow and learn what they were doing. So I'm not naive to the benefits of having that personal relationship with athletes and journalism, because I saw it. I'm a direct beneficiary of that relationship. So I think it's important that athletes continue to develop those relationships, cultivate them, because it's not going to change. Can you put out your own story, put out your own fires? Yes, but there's always going to be times where you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to face the music. You're going to have to answer questions about your productivity and things that you're doing in your personal life. That's just part of the business that we're in.
Did your dad ever cover your games?
Yes, my dad has covered my games on several different occasions. I wish he didn't, because he's awful opinionated, and and as a father, it's difficult. When you are talking to your father, you talk to him and you say, "Dad, this is bothering me. I really don't like the way this is going." You're talking to him as a father-son relationship. Sometimes my dad doesn't know that he's talking in the father-son relationship. Sometimes he thinks he's talking to an athlete and he's a journalist. And he'll use some of the things that we talked about in private on his social media feeds. And I have to remind him, Dad, you're my dad first, and then you're a journalist. So you have to take that into consideration when we're talking.
At your level, you can't have a talk with him and say,
No, I have to tell, Dad, this conversation is off the record.
Yeah.
This conversation is off the record.
My sons tell me to go to hell all the time. Adam, you had you're sort of in a crossover position. You're in the media, but you're a businessman. And I wonder what your experience has been with the media since you kind of dove into the media pool yourself, and Alex, your co-founder, the one charged with making the controversial comments, said something about we want to route every newspaper and see them burning in ashes on the sidewalk of, got a lot of comment, got a lot of controversy. And I suppose you had to kind of deal with that. So in this kind of crossover position, how have you found the sporting press since you dove into it?
As we are a subject of?
Yeah.
I think as it relates to the quote from Alex, sort of the context of it was, why are we hiring so aggressively from newspapers? At that time, we had just hired a team in the Bay Area where we had pulled a lot of folks from one particular publisher. And the full context of the quote was honestly that those individuals were not being treated well. And so our view is we're going to continue to be aggressive recruiting talent as it's available to us, as we can sort of do things like up people's pay, give them great benefits, give them stock options in our company, and really just treat them and sort of with the respect they deserve as these amazingly talented journalists. And so the quote, obviously, it was a little graphic, caused a bit of controversy, but I think we've learned, and I'll sort of tie this back into something Jeannie mentioned. I understand the sentiment, and as we've become subject of media in our own right, I have feelings all the time like this coverage is biased, this coverage isn't totally factually accurate, this doesn't feel right. But it sort of comes with the territory, I think, is what we've realized. And obviously there are some best practices in how to kind of manage relationships with the press that's covering us. And so I think it comes down to accountability and keeping us honest. And I think we've sort of accepted that. But I think we could do separately a whole panel on kind of the NBA rumor mill and the way that's sort of exploded in the last however many years. I will say, I think that, and obviously some of our reporters break NBA news, as I'm sure you know, but on the sort of core publishing side, I think what gets us excited, and I think it's the reason we can actually have a very healthy, balanced relationship with players, is because we aren't actually clicks driven. It's, being a subscription publisher, it's more about storytelling and engaging fans and not being as sensationalistic. And so obviously that's my pitch for why everyone should go subscribe to The Athletic. But I think there does need to responsibility is really important, and there really isn't a lot of accountability with Twitter, with digital, and I hope we get back closer to that.
Do athletes come in, and Katie, you have a lot of contact with athletes on what you might think a more personal, basis when you do stuff with them. Do athletes come in more media savvy, have you found, than they used to? And I'm going to ask Larry and Jeannie that also. You find them pretty media savvy, or you would tend to connect with athletes who are media savvy, I would guess, right?
Yeah, it's part of what formed the way we handled guests on my old show, which was called Garbage Time, and on my new show, Always Late, which you should go subscribe to ESPN Plus if that's what we're doing. Tell them you should subscribe to that. How much is yours?
$5 a month?
Yes, us too. $4.99 a month, actually. Save a penny. But so
Larry, you selling anything down there?
No.
The way we approach guests is, you start to see athletes come in more buttoned up, more ready to give you the same answers you've kind of heard a lot. And I don't hold that against them. I think that's kind of a product of what Jeannie was talking about. You don't want to say anything and have that run away and become a story, and you don't want to. So I get why they are that way. But we sort of found that they didn't want to do the typical interview, and we didn't want to do it either. And so we were just like, hey, what if we had you do something totally wacky? Like we had Odell Beckham Jr. read lines from Mad Men, which was ending at the time, and auditioned to be in Mad Men, and did not make any sense, but he had so much fun doing it. And anybody watching our show, all three of them, hi Mom, got to see a side of him that you didn't see before. And so that's where, I mean, and I'm just speaking for my show and my strategy as a person finding her way in this sports media. Our kind of area, the corner that we have is like, look, you get all the information from everybody else. Like, let's show these athletes as just people that are people you'd want to hang out with, or maybe people you wouldn't, but like, here's a side of them you wouldn't see. Like Kevin Love answering phone calls asking for love advice, called Loveline, very funny. But it's a different way that they can't do on Twitter. They're busy, they have stuff to do.
Yeah.
So we do the production part for them, and we're like, let's just goof off and see what comes of it.
Yeah, I want to get back to the type of content, but while we're on the subject, Jeannie, because of your experience that you've had, do you talk to the young kids coming in about, or does you turn that over to Irvin, who's had his own experiences with the media? I mean, would you use your experience to talk to your players about the media?
Well, I think that the young athletes now are very savvy about their, who they want to be, the message they want to deliver. They have PR people, they have coaches. We have this kid, Kyle Kuzma, who I have just watched really blossom. And because he's media friendly, he's prepared. That's, he's gotten a lot of commercials. He knows that the media is his friend. If he's prepared and he gets an opportunity to get the platform, it's going to lead to more opportunities for him as he goes through his career and hopefully post-career as well. So I've really seen a difference in attitude from back in the day, Jack, like when, we had a very famous Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who really didn't like to do any kind of media. And now he's become a journalist, writing for many different publications. And but there was a day and time where you had athletes that would not speak to media. And now I see that the young people are much more prepared and much more embracing of being able to tell their own story through media and through their own social media.
Larry, do you find your young player, Larry, by the way, they had a panel yesterday about unicorns, which was, the basketball equivalent of trying to find a big player who can shoot and do everything. Larry's a unicorn. Larry has been with one team. Larry has been with one team for 16 seasons, which is incredible. You can applaud if you want to, but I mean, that is a remarkable achievement. So you've seen, well, of course, you're trying to think when you came in. Social media would have been around, but certainly not what it is. Do young players come in media savvy, and do you talk to them about what they should expect from this swarming horde of people like myself?
Well, they definitely are much more prepared because they've been utilizing since they were in high school. They've kind of mastered the art of communication through that way. If anything, I'm always trying to harp on them the importance of being able to communicate with other human beings that are actually in front of you, which they struggle to do. When I came in the locker room, we were talking about it earlier, the locker room was a lot more charismatic, a lot more energy because guys were talking, they were listening to music, they were engaging with each other. Now you walk in the locker room and it's pretty quiet because everybody's on their phones and they're engaged in whatever else is going on outside of what they should be focusing on. That's in the locker room, building that camaraderie and working to be a cohesive unit as a team. Communicating interpersonally is very important to do that. But they do know how to master the social media. They understand it. They know how to communicate with each other, find deals and opportunities, things that they are into, from fashion to sneakers to all the things they really enjoy. They're able to connect with people who are affluent in those areas, and so I've seen them be able to do it, and I'm actually in awe of how well they do it, because I just haven't grasped it.
Do they try to say, "What's with your phone, man? You got?"
No, they get on me all the time about it, but I think that it's important to be able to engage with people and develop those relationships. And also, I don't think we take into account when you're talking about media and how some guys have difficulty with it. You know, when I live in Arizona, I play for the Arizona Cardinals. We haven't been, a historically great franchise in terms of our success on the field, so we don't have the same following. We have maybe 5 or 6 beat writers that we see every day. But if you play for the New York Giants or New York Knicks or the Los Angeles Lakers, I mean, they have 30 or 40, maybe 50 different publications in the locker room every single day, and these guys are all competing for stories that somebody else has not taken an angle on. And so it's a little bit different when you're able to build those relationships with a guy like Ken Summers or Scott Bordeaux, who've been in the business 25, 30 years. They understand and appreciate the art of covering athletes. And if you say something that's compromising, since they have a relationship with you, they might not run with it. They say, "Fitz, you sure you want to say it like that?" I've had guys actually say that to me in an interview. "You sure that doesn't sound like you normally would sound?" They would give me an opportunity to fix it. If I was in a bigger market and you got 21-year-olds working for not as reputable sites, I mean, they would just take it and run with it. So you have to always take that into consideration too, the market that you're in and the experiences that you have with different media.
So you think it would have been harder to be Larry Fitzgerald, good guy, thoughtful guy, cooperative with the media. You would have always been a great player, but it would have been harder to have that image had you been in New York?
Yeah,
you would have somewhere along the line exploded on somebody? Or?
For sure. I mean, we are all human. We have bad days. We have bad moments. We have disagreements, spats with teammates, coaches. I've had my fair share, but because most of our games are not televised, I'm not covered the same way. So it does have a big determining factor.
But you must have liked it that way. You stayed with one.
I've always been a loyal person. I value loyalty in everything that I do. They drafted me there. They gave me an opportunity to live my dream. And I've had plenty of opportunities to go other places. I just felt like I wanted to build, I wanted to be great where I started. And as opposed to joining my friends, I'd rather beat them personally. I think it's much more gratifying when we catch up in the summertime and I could tell them, y'all kicked your ass when we played in November. And I like that.
Yeah. Yesterday they were talking, Bill Simmons and Commissioner Adam Silver, and they were talking about this certain fatigue factor that athletes, and this was basketball players, seem to be a little, just a little more unhappy. And they both kind of agreed upon it. It kind of surprised me, and I just wonder if it had to do with, and I guess we're going to have to make this sort of the last question, and I'll try to round it into, because we have some Q&A. Do you find that to be the case, and is that the pressure of social media? When I covered the league, it was sort of like the school year. It began in October, June, and then you took off. Now it's a 365-day-a-year league. And I wonder if that drives us to more kind of content, the way the kind of Katie content we can call, more with athletes being cooperative and a less traditional way. Adam, do you, with podcasts and things like that, because they seem to take on a more comfortable relationship between the athlete and the interviewer.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even just with respect to the reporters that are in our newsroom, we are going to be testing some things in the near future around podcasting, and it's just a more comfortable format that I would say more accessible for athletes, for front office, for reporters to just talk a little more openly. Now, when quotes get plucked out of podcasts or whatever, it can sort of have the same effect as anything else. But Reporters tell us all the time they love just like going on a show and like talking openly and being a little more speculative, but not having it be sort of like on the record, so to speak. And so I think we can play with format like that. Yeah.
You feel more comfortable in that kind of thing, Larry, like doing more more friendly content and podcasts and things like that?
Yeah, I do them. I don't have any problem with them, but I can understand what you're saying about the athletes being more ornery, because we answer so many questions that have nothing to do with the actual game. I mean, I just remember watching Kevin Durant when they played the Knicks a few weeks ago, and he scored 27 points, 8 rebounds. He was like shot 60% from the field, unbelievably efficient. Unbelievable game. First question they asked him was, what was it like to receive the ovations every time you scored a point? Like, I play for the Warriors. Why are you asking me about the Knicks fans cheering me? Like, let's talk about the basketball game. I've never said I wanted to play for the Knicks. So you're just answering a lot of questions that don't have anything to do with what you're doing that day to help your team win. And that definitely gets old, being ask those type of questions, and it starts to irritate you. So I can understand why guys get ornery and sometimes react volatile.
Yeah. My questions have disappeared from here. If you want to just keep going. Okay.
I'm going to cough really loud. I have to get it out or else I'm going to sit here and choke. But I keep trying to do it quiet and I do it into the mic. I'm just going to cough. Just block your ear.
Everybody.
Thank you.
All right, we're good. Thank you.
You're so polite.
What is your the vision of the future of sports coverage? I mean, is it going to continue to be a mixture of Katie content and traditional?
I like this.
I've coined a new word,
I
by
like
the way,
it.
but yeah.
All funny, cool stuff is Katie content from here on out.
There you go. Or is there anything, I'll ask you this, Adam, since you're the businessman here, is there anything, in 10 years that's going to change, or will there still be people huddling around players' lockers, in locker rooms, and what do you see as the direction?
Yeah, my guess is as good as anyone's. I would say, the data that I have.
It better be better than anyone's.
Maybe it's a little better.
You run a business.
Yeah, I mean, so given that, I mean, we've seen a tremendous response to what I would describe as a bit of a return to traditional like storytelling and journalism, and so I still think there's absolutely a lot of demand for that. We kind of think about The Athletic as taking some of the best of what Sports Illustrated used to do, what the local sports page used to do, what things like ESPN Insider have done over the years, and sort of putting them together. And we also like to pull in things like with 538 in terms of data journalism, and sort of picking the best of sort of a bunch of different things. And subscribers have really responded to that. And so, being a business person, I go on that. If subscribers go somewhere else, or fans start to consume media in a different way, then we'll have to respond. I still believe there's absolutely strong demand for traditional coverage of the teams that people love, and being very local focused.
Yeah. Jeannie, have any thoughts on the future of, would you?
I think, I like the idea of, as we get more into the, are you okay?
I'm okay. I'm trying not to cough. Sorry, Jeannie. Please keep.
Bless your heart.
It's part of Katie content, by the way.
You're so polite. I think that with gambling on sports, there's going to be more media coverage that will talk about, different aspects of gambling. I like the idea of the things that we're hearing about having different commentators that you'll have a game, but you'll be able to choose the commentators that you want to hear, if you want to take a more humorous slant, or I think in the English Premier League, they even have a channel where it's fans who are doing the commentating on the games. So I think it's really finding different appeals, what appeals to our watchers, our consumers, and delivering the message in a way that they want to hear it. That, I think sports is just, content that people want to see in real time, consume in real time, and now it's all the other bells and whistles that go along with it that will widen the landscape in terms of audience.
Yeah. Larry, you still think you'll be answering questions from reporters when you're still playing at Tom Brady, age of 41 or whatever? Are you still going to be playing them, by the way?
No chance. No chance. Yeah, I think I'll still be answering, athletes should still be answering those questions. I don't think it's going to change that drastically. I think it's a positive that, we're able to now have a little bit more in-depth look at some of the athletes and seeing what these men are about, what these women are about, some of the interests off the court, off the field. I think it's fascinating to learn just how interesting these people are. And I wish that would have been possible years ago. I mean, you look at guys like Magic Johnson, just unbelievable business mind, capable of doing so many things besides run the fast break, 3-on-2 fast break. I mean, one of the best businessmen you could think of. I mean, it'd been great to be able to, see his script, his blueprint to success, transitioning from the basketball court right into the business world. Now helping run, one of the top organizations in the world. I mean, like that's fascinating to see guys be able to do things like that, and the media gives us the opportunity now to be able to see that.
We have time for one. Yeah, this doesn't exactly fit the topic, but it's it kind of does. That sports has become such a platform for, let's say, discussing politics, and we have 4 people looking at it from 4 different ways. Katie succeeded in getting herself in a little bit of trouble, I believe, a while ago by saying something. I don't remember exactly the quote about
this? What's
Donald Trump.
Do athletes
I don't
leave
have
the media
it.
was the question.
I don't have it in here, but I just wondered down the line here, Jeannie, do you say anything to your players about, like, Golden State Warriors have become a very political organization, and do you say anything to your players about that, or does anyone?
I'm so proud of our league, the NBA. I think that we have the best relationship with our players. We think of our players as our partners, and we encourage them to stand up for what they believe in, to be passionate, to help them, give them a platform to be part of the community, and to step up and if they feel it's necessary. If it's not anything that they're interested in, then they don't have to. It's really about their personal choice, and we support them in whatever that is. And I'm proud of our league. I'm proud of our commissioner, and I'm proud of our players for what they stand for and what they believe in.
All right.
I think part of that too is one of the really important things that the media can help athletes with, because there is something to, yes, a player can go on social media and say whatever they want about insert political topic here. I would advise them not to maybe do that because you get the direct reactions from people to that. It gets taken out of context. If it's a tweet, you only have so many characters. If it's a video on Instagram, you only have so much time. Whereas if you really feel passionately about something, I think the media can help you tell that story in a way that, kind of helps you cover for the parts where you don't know what you're talking about, or helps you just tell that story in a way that would be received in a more nuanced way by fans than if you just send out a tweet like, I feel this way.
Yeah. Larry, you've had to thread the needle more than any of us, because you're in a position where I'm not sure whether any of the Cardinals kneeled, but you're in a position where, and I saw something you wrote about, I believe maybe you have a radio show or something, and you're trying to thread that needle between I'm not going to do that and I still respect people's ability to do that. Do you talk to your teammates at all about politics or anything political?
No, I don't personally, but I do. I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, but I liked the fact that guys took it upon themselves to be able to voice what they really felt. If they did it in a stage, outside the realm of the game, their voices wouldn't have been heard. And I liked the fact that they were empowered by giving themselves the opportunity to speak up and talk about the things that were important to them. These guys are taxpaying citizens, honest, hardworking guys. They want to see changes, and I think, when you're in a league that's consistent of, 75 to 80% African Americans, I mean, their view of the world is a little different than, the view of everybody else's. And I think sometimes that can be misconstrued, but I think those guys' hearts were in the right place over the last few years. And, just to get the reaction that we got from President Trump, I mean, like, never in history has a president ever been that engaged in something that's happened in a sports league. And to be able to get the conversation moving in the right direction, I think was something that we can all say was positive.
Do you tell your employees anything, Adam, about, or suggest to your
Yes.
employees any vague guidelines about what they should do?
We do. I mean, we have a social media policy, but I would say we're not trying to, sort of turn everyone, we have 300-person newsroom, and everyone is an individual in that newsroom, and they all have different opinions, and, we sort of let them sort of express those opinions, just like, employees and like athletes can express their opinions. I think our sort of business mindset towards this is, be human, be decent, avoid fighting on Twitter. It's because it's good for your life to avoid that. But yeah, I mean, the politics, it's a very real thing. We'll put a story out that touches on with Colin Kaepernick, and we have to turn the comment sections off, even though these are people that are paying to access a service. And so it's a heightened sort of feeling. We're sensitive to that. But our filter from a coverage standpoint is, with Colin or with anything, if it's newsworthy, we're going to cover it, even if people unsubscribe because they want us to stick to sports. And so focus is sports, but there are definitely newsworthy things outside of just, the events that are on the field, and that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah. Katie, you also thread a needle because you are in fact called an opinionist. But somewhere along the line there has...
a lot of things, by the way.
Huh?
I'm called a lot of things.
And part of Katie content is expressing opinion, so you have to kind of... How do you watch yourself, and how much trouble have you gotten into?
A bunch. It's tough because, your job is to tell people what you think about stuff. And if that's what you do all the time, it's hard to stop doing that. But it's what I've learned mostly is that there are times to take a stand and there are times to shut up, and that's a tough lesson to learn when you like to talk a lot. But it's more about mature responsibility and knowing that when you speak, people want to take your words and make them represent your company or represent your boss or represent where you're from or represent. When I think I'm just speaking for me, I've now learned I'm speaking for a number of people, and so I don't talk at all anymore about most stuff.
You don't talk?
Thanks for bringing this up. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, all right. I'm sure if there's any ESPN executives out there, they're all going, I hope she doesn't say this. I hope she doesn't. But I guess we're around to the time. I messed up the
Do you want me to
question.
try to figure it out?
I messed up the... No, you can't figure it out.
Okay.
Is there questions? Huh? Here, bring them
What's
up.
wrong with it?
No, see? I'm sorry, we should have... The worthy assistant is going to bring up the questions here.
What app is it supposed to be? Is it the docs?
I'm very sorry. Want me to get
I
that?
got you.
Thanks, Katie.
I didn't do that to be mean. I
Shut
wanted
up.
to be... No, don't clap. No. Just Google that. It's how I do the script for my show. That's the only reason I knew that.
Let's see here. With the widespread access of athletes, this is a good question. With the widespread access of athletes through a growing number of platforms and mediums, have sports lost some of its mythology? Has the idea of being an athlete become commoditized and cheapened? Boy, you can tell these are grad students, by the way, asking these. Has sports lost some of its mythology? That's a very interesting question, which would probably take 40 minutes to answer. But Jeannie, do you think, I mean, you came along at you were with some legendary
Right.
people, the Showtime Lakers, and your father, was a myth himself, kind of almost. Do you think it's lost anything like?
Well, I think, I don't think we lose anything by, instead of having them on a pedestal and it being unreachable. I think the fact that athletes, more about them makes them more inspiring, because it means it's more something everybody can do. Whereas if it's, I don't know, maybe it demystifies them because, I don't know. I like it the way it is now, as opposed to like creating a persona that nobody can live up to, and then it makes it seem like it's impossible to reach. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Since I'm sure this doesn't fit the topic either, but I'm sure everybody wants to hear it. Larry, what are your thoughts on the Antonio Brown situation? One of your fellow wide receivers who approaches things somewhat differently than yourself.
No, I love AB. Mr. Big Chest is a good friend of mine. But I don't think he's going about it the right way personally. To be able to play with an all-time quarterback like he's able to play with, I don't think he understands how good he has it. It could get tough out there. It could get tough out there. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Not some KD content there.
Well, the only thing that's going to leave this panel, and has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's best. Finally, I guess, are we at the finally? We're at the finally stage. I think Larry kind of answered this. How do the Woj and Adam Schefters of the world have all the inside scoops, but more in the future, will more players take charge of breaking their own news? Like if you were ever going to leave, Larry, would you break that news yourself, or would you tell your father and let him blast it, or would you tell a traditional Arizona reporter?
I would probably talk. I definitely would talk to somebody that I respected, a guy like Jim Trotter, who I have a relationship with, or somebody that I've built up a great rapport with over the years that I would feel comfortable with, and would do it in the right manner at the right time, and present it in the proper light. But the Adam Scheffners of the world and these guys who break these stories, I mean, the GMs are volunteering this information. The coaches are talking. The players, I mean, they're trying to get information out to put themselves in the best light, and it's ugly business. It really is, because not all of it is factual. People jockeying for positions for next jobs, and I mean it's really ugly at times.
So our short answer to the question: do athletes still need media?
Yes.
We all
Yes. Very much
sort of
so.
agree on. So
Yeah.
I guess we're at the end. Thank you, everybody.